Good morning, guys. We are still working our way through finding area of different shapes. So far we have done the area of a parallelogram. Yesterday we talked about finding the area of a triangle, and today we're going to talk about finding the area of a trapezoid. So we're kind of using the information that we've already learned from triangles and trapezoids to look at the area of parallelograms and triangles to figure out the area of a trapezoid. So think about the formulas that we've already done with base times height, and then a triangle was 1/2 base times height. So both of those kind of play into figuring out the area of a trapezoid. So looking at this is not an example. This is kind of just where the formula comes from. So the opening question is finding the area of the top of a desk, which will be the example that we do on the next slide. So it says the top of a desk is the shape of a trapezoid with the dimensions shown. So just going to that really quickly, this is that example that we'll go over. So the base of a parallelogram, so what you're looking at on the screen is just a trapezoid, but the parallelogram, so the shape that looked similar to this, if I were to break it in half, it creates a trapezoid. It's more of a slanted, let's do it. It's more of a slanted line, so I have a trapezoid here and a trapezoid here. So the base of a parallelogram is base 1, so this is part of the base, and then this is base 2. You can think about it on the top and the bottom as well, so this is base 1 and base 2. So when you're finding the area of something like this, it's really this part plus this part times height. So when you were finding the area of a parallelogram, your formula was just base times height. But if I were to break a parallelogram in half, it gives me a trapezoid. So that's why I'm using base 1 plus base 2, because I now have the kind of the bottom of the shape and the top of the shape. So I need to add those two together in order to get the actual base total. So if that doesn't make sense to you, just at least know what the formula is and know what to plug in. So looking at this trapezoid, and this has the formula shown for you. So the formula is half, because if you're looking at this parallelogram, this whole shape, half of it is a trapezoid. So much like the triangle, when we were talking about like a square or a parallelogram, if you divide it this way, gives you 2 triangles. So a trapezoid is the same thing. I'm breaking a parallelogram in half. So that's where the half comes from. Then the height, and most of the ways that you'll see height is down the middle, and it'll have a number right here, because the height is the top from the bottom. So it's not actually the length of the slanted line, it's the amount from the bottom of the shape to the top of the shape. So that's your height, just like triangles and just like parallelograms. And then base 1 plus base 2. So think about this. The bottom is base 2, the top is base 1. If I were to draw a trapezoid that matches this shape, and I'm trying to do the best that I can on a computer, but if I were to draw a trapezoid that matches the shape, it would be more out like that. But I now have, there we go. I now have the top of this shape right here, and then the bottom of the shape of this same shape over here. So this matches this, and this matches this. So the reason I'm adding them is because this is really all one. So just adding the top and the bottom. So if none of that makes sense to you, or where that formula came from, just know what H represents and what B1 and B2 represents while we are going through this. So looking at this first example, this is the example with the desk. So just as you are working through this, and some of you on homework from Monday with just area of parallelogram, there was a question where it asked about what was her error in the problem, and a lot of you said she multiplied base times height instead of height times base. Remember, with multiplication, it can be done in any order. So if I multiply 2 times 3, I get 6. If I multiply 3 times 2, I still get 6. So I wrote the equation right here, or the formula that we're going to use. So it's 1/2 times base 1 plus base 2 times height. In the last slide, it was 1/2 times height times base 1 plus base 2. So I'm showing you this to say, as long as you're multiplying the correct things together, you should get the same answer. So I've set them up differently according to the two formulas, the one written here and the one on the last slide, to show you that you will still get the same answer. So my 1/2 is going to stay 1/2 in neither of them. That's just always the same. Then I have base 1 plus base 2. So this is base 1, base 2, and then that leaves this as my height. So if I'm using the formula that's right here that's underlined already, I have then 12 plus 30, and it needs to stay in parentheses because I need to add it together before I multiply anything with it. And then times height, which was 18. So this is that formula. And then on this side, if you're doing 1/2 times height, so height was 18 times, and then again, yes, it's base 1 plus base 2, but if you do it backwards, as long as you're adding the two bases together, you're still going to get the same answer. So let's start on this problem over here. I'm going to go ahead and add what's in parentheses. So 12 plus 30 is 42. So now I have 42 times 18 times 1/2. And what I'm actually going to do, and if you want to multiply in different order, that's fine. But because I know 1/2 times 42 is the same thing as dividing by 2, so if I were to actually do this problem and I have 1/2 times 42, I can make a whole number a fraction by putting a 1 under it. So I would get 42 over 2. So this is where you guys can see that multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. So 42 divided by 2 is equal to 21. So now I have 21 times 18. Okay, then I'm going to multiply those together, and I'm going to come over here so I have some space. Times 18. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. Then I'm going to add my 0. Then 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 2 is 2. So this would give me 378. So my answer is 378, and it's in inches. And again, it is squared because I'm finding the area of something. So that's my final answer on this side. So then looking at my other side, just so you can kind of see if you set them up differently, as long as you're adding this correct things and multiplying the correct things, your answer should be good. So looking at this other side, I'm again going to start by adding what's in the parentheses. So now I have 1/2 times 18 times 42. So that was the same thing as over here, just the 18 and the 42 have swapped. So I'm going to do 18 times 1/2. So again, 1/2 times 18. I can make it a whole by putting a 1. So I get 18 over 2. If I divide that, it would be 9. Or just think of 18 divided by 2 is 9. So now I have 9 times 42. So I'm going to multiply that together. 9 times 2 is 18, and then 9 times 4 is 36, plus 1 is 37. So again, this is 378. It's in inches, and area is always squared. So either way, you should get 378 inches squared. Okay, so remember multiplication, as long as you are doing it correctly, it does not matter the order of which you do it, but you need to still use PEMDAS and solve what's in the parentheses first. So looking at just one more example, so I have 1/2 times height times base 1 plus base 2. So what I like to start with is just labeling. So this is base 1, base 2, and then my height. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my equation. So my 1/2 stays the same. My height is 7. And then I have times base 1 plus base 2. So base 1 is 4 and base 2 is 8. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and add, start working my way through. 8 plus 4 is 12 times 7 times 1/2. So what I'm going to do here, and what I did on the other one, was actually do 1/2 first, but I know that 7 isn't automatically divisible by 2. I know that I would have a fraction or a decimal. So what I'm going to do first in this case is multiply 7 times 12. If you want to do 7 over 2, that's fine. If you multiply this, you would get 7 over 2 and then multiply times 12, which is really going to give you the same problem that we're about to do. So if you want to go that route, that's fine. It would be 84 over 2, and you would divide. Or if you got to this part and you had 1/2 times 7 times 12, if you multiply 7 times 12 first, you would get 84 times 1/2, which is the same thing as dividing by 2. So this and this is the same thing. Okay, so either way with this answer, you would get 42, and it's in feet, and my answer is always squared. Okay, so just make sure you're adding your two bases first before you multiply by anything, that you're multiplying by 1/2, that you're looking at the question and making sure what it is. The height is always going to be, a lot of them will have dashed lines and a number. That's always your height. Your bases are the top and the bottom number. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I will be more than happy to help you. Your homework that goes along with this is page 242 in your workbook, and you guys need to turn it in by tomorrow, and then tomorrow you guys will have a quiz that will be due on Friday. So if you have questions, please reach out to me now. Don't wait until the last minute. I am more than happy to help you with them. I hope you guys have a great rest of the day and rest of the week. Bye.